Hello, everyone. Welcome back to more indie-ish titles, as I like to call them with Indie Creates, considering how many franchises they get to work on.
Oh, you know, the strange thing about Inti Creates and me is that they keep putting out these games that look intensely interesting to play while I'm watching them, but just slide off my conscious awareness the moment I stop watching them. Um,
Yeah, that happens a lot for me with a lot of games in the sphere, aka retro throwback 2D platformers. I had to when Cyber Shadow went up for pre-order the other day, so now you know when this was recorded. I had to force myself to
Well, I mean,
pre-order it so I wouldn't forget that it came out, so I could actually play it.
you also don't need to do the you know when this was recorded thing, considering this next week.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay. Way to ruin the mystery. Gosh. Anyway, if you remember our last encounter with blasting and masting, we saved the world question mark and our robot girlfriend with our tank. So, but it turns out our robot girlfriend is still needs to be saved. So we have to go into space to save her.
As you do.
oh,
Yeah.
that's why I forgot Blaster Master 1. It's because it has the most cliche anime plotline ever. Okay.
Yeah.
To be fair, that was kind of intentionally so based on the plots for the original game.
Yeah, Blaster Master Zero was effectively a reboot-ish of the original game, and so this is where they're taking the story in a new direction, which is honestly kind of creepy in that your robot girlfriend is like slowly mutating into a terrible monster thing, and she can't leave the tank, otherwise she'll basically like die on the spot. So, yeah, and your frog is still there, even though he doesn't do much this time.
He opens wormholes.
It's like
Yeah.
if Outlaw Star were just like 90% less sexy. Okay.
I mean, kinda.
Okay, look, after that Resident Evil reveal, anything is sexy to the internet, is what I've discovered. So,
Everyone's horny for 9-foot tall vampire lady.
Oh. Well, yeah. I mean, we all like to pretend that Twilight destroyed vampires for us forever, but we just know that's not true. We were just waiting for the right one to come along, I guess.
well, I mean, vampires were always supposed to be like seductive and stuff because, ooh, they're so mysterious.
Well,
and I'm gonna let them suck my
except
blood.
for
Ooh.
except for Nosferatu, that was very clearly not supposed to be seductive.
No, not really. Oh, man. So anyway, I love the plot holes not the plot hole filling that this game does, aka why aren't we using the super tank from the last game? Because it would have blown up because it's too good. And why aren't we using our old gun from the last game? Because it's too good, so we put a safety valve on our new gun so that it won't blow up. Okay, game.
That makes
Sure.
no goddamn sense.
Well, they have some funny dialogue about how because I think we mentioned this in the last part. Once you got the gun up to max in the first game, it was basically overpowered as shit. So they nerfed the gun and added a few mechanics to make it more interesting to use in this one. So they basically say, "Oh yeah, you didn't have the safety on your old gun. You're lucky it didn't explode in your face." Is I think roughly the line that she says in order to justify it. Although there is some new combat stuff in this game, so it's not just like you're weaker. Though I haven't played this in forever, so I don't exactly remember how everything works.
So, like, I like how half of her body has been absorbed by this mutant monstrosity, but it's still generally human-shaped. So it basically amounts to her sprite having been splashed in blue paint for the most part.
Yeah, you know, she was playing with her arts and crafts and spilt some, and this is the galaxy-wide quest for some laundry detergent.
Like, in the earlier picture, it looked really grotesque and stuff because you could see her arm, but her arm has just been encased in metal, so it's fine. We don't have to worry about the uglies. So I guess it was only 20% less sexy than Outlaw Star. Okay.
I have not watched Outlaw Star. Like, how anime sexy is it? Are we talking?
It's good. It's just like the spaceship has a woman who like gets naked and sits in a tank whenever they're flying the ship.
And she's like the computer of the ship and stuff.
Yeah, so it's very anime. Also,
So
like
the-
half the crew is women, and the other half is the main character.
So wouldn't that mean there's only 2 people on the ship?
It would
No.
if we weren't if we weren't going by anime logic, where half the characters are only half a character. But like, okay, I really shouldn't be dissing one of my favorite childhood shows like this.
It's good to understand its flaws. Oh, I forgot that in this game you want to fall from a high height in order to refill your special meter. Was like the one big gameplay change they changed for the tank.
Yeah, in order to build SP, you have to stomp on the ground really hard, like you're throwing a tantrum.
I want to shoot the bad guys now.
Why don't you use my big fancy missiles?
It's a strange kind of gameplay thing, but it works. Like, it makes kind of some puzzle platforming sections where you're trying to figure out how to get high enough to slam down. And there is something in place where you can't just use the boost in order to get high and then do it. Like, they try to keep you from cheating like that. So instead, you do have to actually, like, naturally fall from a pretty decent height.
I'm trying to imagine what the main character's hair would look like in real life, and all I'm imagining is those horrible mullets from Goblet of Fire.
Oh, you mean Fred's?
Yeah, something like that. I mean everybody in that movie had horrible mullets. I don't know what they were thinking, but yeah.
It was 2006 or so. Like, let's be fair. Nobody had good hair around then.
Also, Fred's gray for some reason in this game.
Huh?
Well, frogs can change their skin color, can't they?
I mean, Fred's a alien space robot thing, so.
Alien space robot frog. Yeah, you know how it is.
Also, you still take massive fall damage if you go even like a pixel above your max jump height as Fred.
Oh, there was one part of this game that was like ridiculously like dumb because it had the platforming.
I think I recorded this before they patched that out.
Yeah, I don't remember where that room is. Isn't it one of the like side planets that you can do?
I think it's C4 if I remember correctly, but we'll have to see.
Oh no.
We'll remember it when we see it.
Yeah.
Oh no, I remember this. The other game had this too, didn't it?
Yeah, this has been in something in Blaster Master since the beginning, in that half of it's tank and half of it's overhead
Top-down.
shooting stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, so they really changed it because A, the gun's not ridiculously overpowered, and 2, you have this dodge mechanic.
Okay, it's possibly controversial opinion, but like I know people love pixel art and everything, but something about this art style really turns me off playing the game.
The overhead in particular,
The
or
overhead in particular, yes.
Well, there is something about the proportions that have always kind of bothered me in Blaster Master. When you're in the overhead, in that, like, your hitbox is just kind of your legs, and your head is sort of like just kind of there for show because so there's some weirdness that kind of goes on there. Like, it's kind of hard to tell where exactly your hitbox is and what will and will not hurt you. But it doesn't bother me that much. I mean, it's interesting looking at these pixel art games because they're effectively a genre onto themselves now. Like, we've kind of gone past the point where they're just kind of 80s throwbacks. I mean, this one is an 80s throwback because Blaster Masters is an 80s game, but, you know.
That one at least has a bit of an excuse.
But, yeah, you know, even despite that, like, we're at the point where... What year did Mega Man 9 come out?
2008 or 9.
Yeah, so we're getting to the point where we're closing on 15 years from that game, which really kind of pioneered the 8-bit pixel art kind of revival genre, effectively. So we're also getting to the point where there are kids playing games now who this type of game has just been around their entire childhood, not just as a novelty. Like, tons of games just come out in pixel art style now.
I mean, sort of. You really have to be a mid to late 90s kid to be from that generation where you didn't.
Yeah, I would.
Because, I mean, I'm not sure how many Nintendo and Super Nintendo games were still around when you were a kid, Ted, but I mean, like, John Lewis and I definitely grew up with, like, NESs and Blaster Master and crap around.
So, like, I did have friends who had an SNES. I didn't have one myself. My oldest console is a Game Boy Color. So, like, I played, like, Donkey Kong Country 2 and I think the Aladdin SNES game at a friend's house a couple of times.
When it comes to pixel art games, though, like there was an NES like at school, but I never actually owned an 8-bit console myself. So even at my age, I'm more of a 16-bit exclusive kid.
It's more that you still grew up with it around and visible and stuff.
I don't know about visible.
Well, 16-bit kind of styled art, I think, sort of lasted a bit longer, too, because of the Game Boy Advance. That also had a bunch of Super Nintendo ports and NES ports, too. Come, like, 2004, they ported a bunch of NES games onto the Game Boy Advance.
I mean, before the 90s, you pretty much had to have played a system itself to have familiarized yourself with the look of the games. So the only 8-bit game that was familiar to me was Super Mario 3, Super Mario Brothers 3. And a little bit of Duck Hunt, maybe, but that didn't exactly stick in my consciousness for obvious reasons.
Yeah, it's like you're shooting ducks.
But, like, so I don't know. I guess familiarity with 8-bit stuff, your mileage may vary, but I guess maybe that's why I'm mostly ambivalent to this stuff, because I never got familiar with it until after it was already gone.
One thing that I do appreciate about Inti Creates and other developers who try to do some stuff like this is that I appreciate the let's do what we remember the NES looking like thing versus just making games NES like as
with the limitations and all.
Yeah, I seem to remember a few games in this kind of style not looking so good.
Yeah, the one that I remember that does it the best is Castlevania Curse of the Moon. Castlevania, God. Okay.
Bloodstained.
Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. Particularly
it's
one, but
so.
Yeah, but that is also Inti Creates, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically, at this point, if it's an 8-bit kind of old school art style, it's most likely Inti Creates.
Yeah, but one thing that I really liked is, especially for the boss animations for those games, like all of the animations are so smooth and cool looking, and you never got animations that looked that good on NES ever. Honestly, you were lucky if anything animated on NES ever.
Looking at you, Mega Man's 4 through 6, where your bosses were basically giant solitary sprites that had a hitbox. I
mean, well, I guess, 2 and 3 had that sort of too, but at least, like, with the Gutsman tank, like, his hand moves up and down. That's something, right? And the dragon kind of swooped around too, I think. But
very impressive.
But yeah, it's even stuff like, if you look at the original Super Mario Brothers, every enemy only has, like, 2 frames of animation. Bowser just kind of
doesn't have any at all besides his feet.
Yeah, he just kind of like does that all around. Yeah, even later NES games, like Mario 3, the enemies animate a little bit in that game. And I suppose Bowser animates a decent amount for the time, but you very rarely see enemies that feel as alive in actual NES games as you do in games that are the good games, I should say, that are made in this pixel art style, I still think that I would like to see more of that edge on the 16-bit, 32-bit sort of side rather than just doing 8-bit though. Because maybe this is just me. Maybe I'm just sort of sick of it because again, like Lewis, I didn't grow up with an NES. So my nostalgia here is not the strongest.
I'm of the mind that due to how much better everything animates, I'd say it's kind of a in between 8 and 16-bit in a lot of regards.
For this game? Yeah, I think that makes sense.
I mean, kind of just the idea in general, but obviously Into Creates does it the best.
Yeah. The colors, too, I think, are also a lot better. Like, I mean, there's still... The fact that, like, most of the ground here is purple, for example, and different shades of purple and whatnot, that's a very NES sort of thing, where most of the terrain is a similar shade of color because of how the sprites work.
Yeah, things tended to be a bit more generally colorful on the Master System.
Yeah, the Master System just had better hardware about that. They could have everything be as many different colors as they want, if I remember correctly. I don't
necessarily know
specifics.
as many different colors as they want, but they had.
I think they had more variety in the colors than the NES can
A
handle.
wider palette.
Because you think of something like the first Castlevania, where everything is basically either blue or orange, and then that's it, you know. And if you look at even something like Alex Kidd on the Master System, generally speaking, it's a much more varied color palette for every level.
Yeah.
What's weird is that, like, Super Mario Brothers, in the overworld sections, like, there's a decent variety of colors, but that just disappears as soon as you go underground or in a castle. So I don't really know what's going on there, but whatever. Actually, wait, maybe the Goombas are just the same colors as, like, the ground. Never mind.
It's not
Cloudbush, everyone, Cloudbush.
It's not that 8-bit systems couldn't handle colors. It's that they could only have so many colors active at one given time. Yeah. And that remained true up through the 16-bit era. It just became a larger number of colors at a time.
Yeah.
This is why fun fact, Mega Man is actually 2 different sprites.
Yeah, which is I think
because his body is one sprite and his head is a different sprite due to color limitations.
I think that's also probably why Mega Man games tended to lag more than some other NES games, because there's already an extra sprite on screen at all times. So it takes less things being on screen for it to lag. Oh yeah, so this boss is actually reminding me of the other thing that newer games tend to be able to avoid is enemy limits. You can have way more enemies on screen too, because of stuff like that, which kind of makes me want them to like toy with that in different ways and sort of styles of games. Like, for example, I want them to do a beat 'em up in the style of Final Fight or Streets of Rage, but have as many enemies on screen as like a Dynasty Warriors, just to see how it would like work, because that's something you can absolutely do nowadays.
The fun thing about that, though, is that Dynasty Warriors, Namco, I think, is the owner. Is it Namco? No,
it's
Koei
Tecmo.
Koei Tecmo.
I always get those two mixed up. But in any case, they basically patented enemy density. So...
Can you patent that? Is that a thing?
If it's a certain program allowing the engine to render that many enemies at the same time, then sure.
You know,
it's how one company I think patented like the loading screen mini games things, and that's why no one else can use them.
So that actually reminds me of something 11 is the soccer RPG Sega makes. They tried to patent like a certain way of swiping the stylus on the DS touchscreen, I think, at one point. And I remember just thinking that was the stupidest thing I've ever seen patented in my life. Granted, it's probably not the stupidest thing that has been patented, because I'm sure there's plenty of dumb things.
Patent trolls exist, so.
Yeah, it's just the stupidest one I've personally seen. Leave your favorite dumb patent in the comments below.
Will we read them by the time we get to the next part? No, because we're doing these in a session. So sorry, we'll see you all in the next part.